Hey, what's going on, guys? Tom here. I just kind of hanging out in my remote bunker of an office, my basement office, and wanted to just send off a happy Good Friday greeting. Now, historically, we know we've never had a Good Friday service, and that's mostly been because we don't have access to our usual meeting space for Good Friday. And that remains true today. We don't have access to our usual meeting space for Good Friday. But we don't have access for our usual meeting space for anything. So what's the difference anymore, right? But Good Friday is a really important day in the life of the church and in our faith. And I wanted to just offer you a quick reflection. We know what Good Friday is about, of course. Good Friday is the day we remember Jesus' crucifixion on the cross. This morning I started thinking about the fact that we are living our lives a lot like the disciples lived their lives 2,000 years ago on this day. And we're all, in effect, in hiding. We're isolated in our own little personal bunkers in our homes, and we're quarantining and social distancing ourselves from the world. And now, of course, we're not in hiding because we're afraid of persecution or that the Romans are going to come arrest us or that the powers that be over us are going to come arrest us if we go out, though there has been some reports of fines and things like that, which are interesting, but not the point of this talk. We could talk about that another time if you like. But we're so much like those disciples whom, when Jesus was arrested and tried and ultimately crucified, they were nowhere to be seen because they're all isolating and hiding in their own private spaces out of the public eye. So in a lot of respects, we're like them on this Good Friday. And I wondered if perhaps, we talk a lot about social distancing and quarantining and isolating ourselves. I wondered if some of us might be starting to think, or maybe the temptation is starting to creep into our mind to believe that God Himself is social distancing Himself from us. It's really easy to succumb to that temptation without even really thinking about it. I mean, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of anger, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot in terms of answers. And there's a whole lot of varying opinions, and people are getting upset with one another. And these are all very much so the same feelings that Jesus' disciples were feeling the night that Jesus died on the cross. They were feeling separated from God. They felt like God had let them down, that God was distancing Himself from them, that God had failed them. I've talked to some who are starting to wonder if God is hearing our prayers about ending this virus and ending the pandemic and putting an end to all this and fixing the wrongs of this world, and all this talk and all this worry, all this anxiety has really brought to mind a pretty famous passage from Scripture that has been on my mind for a little while now, and that's the words that John records in John chapter 15. He says, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." When Jesus went to the cross, He proved to us that He wasn't a God of social distancing. He wasn't a God who withdraws and avoids. When Jesus was on the cross, He proclaimed, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" It's a famous line he yells right before He succumbs to death. And that line tells us so much about the heart of God. In that moment, Jesus experienced what humanity is truly like. In that moment, Jesus drew closer to the human condition than at any point in history. God became man and experienced the separation that we have experienced from God, the separation that came as a result of our sin. And while hanging there on the cross, He came so close to us that he experienced our fear, our worry, our heartbreak, our feeling of isolation, so that that feeling of isolation, so that that distance between us and God would no longer have to exist. If the cross shows us anything, it's that our God is not a God of social distancing. Our God is a God of intimacy. Our God is a God of personal connection. Our God is a God of nearness, of connection, of understanding what we are going through and being with us through it. I don't know if that's any encouragement to you today on Good Friday. On Sunday, we're going to celebrate the result of that intimacy and that nearness. We're going to celebrate the resurrection from the dead, which is the hope that comes as a result of that ultimate sacrifice. So I hope you'll join us for that. I hope that you are focusing on the cross and on the celebration of the resurrection, which is to come this weekend, despite the fact that we can't be together, despite the fact that we can't enjoy what is honestly one of the greatest times of the year in the church calendar for us personally, but also for the Church Universal. I hate the fact that we're missing Easter this year. I hate the fact that we're not gathering together. It breaks my heart. And yet, even in the midst of that brokenness, I know that our God is with us. He's with each and every one of us. Thanks to the cross. Be well, stay healthy, stay safe, and let's talk again on Sunday. See you then. Bye.